Hello everyone, welcome to the next installment of my interview series. I am joined by support player for Gen.G Crispy. We're here to talk about everything coming up in OWCS Stage 1 this year, but before all that, Crispy, I wanted to talk about the off-season because we were going to the off-season after Stockholm and basically everyone in the Overwatch world is a free agent. So what did your off-season look like when that sort of roster mania started happening?
Um, Not gonna lie, I had like the most uneventful off season of like any player. I just didn't get any messages until Crusty, which was a funny one to get. But
That's
yeah,
a
I don't
big one
know.
to get.
It's a really jarring one to get when you're sat there with like you're like shit. The only person who's messaged me is like some tier 3 manager, and then you just see Crusty pop up in your messages. It's pretty jarring. But after that, even it was pretty uneventful too, because I just talked to him. He was like, "Yo, you want to join?" I said, "Yeah," and then we made the team, and then I was on it. There was no drama really, so it was pretty chill.
It felt like from the outside as well, Gen.G were actually one of the first teams to kind of lock everyone down.
Yeah.
So what kind of time was this by the time it was like, all right, we're in, we've got the roster, we're signed?
Um, I can't remember the exact date, but I'm pretty sure we were maybe the very first, or the
At least
second
for a
after
full
the ultimate.
roster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the full roster for sure. I think TU might have been before us, but we had our roster like locked in and I was still seeing like panic rumors about TM and VP and
Yeah.
stuff. Big up the leakers on Twitter, but they got ours fucking early as well, and it never changed. I think that's the main part of our roster is that it never changed. Like
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of these rosters they had a clear vision in their heads and it had to change like 6 or 7 times. But for us, they got the 5 of us in, and I think after then they never looked back, which is quite nice.
And you said it was Crusty who approached you first. So Crusty was, I guess, like
Yeah,
the first person in the door, then got to basically pick every
yeah,
piece he
yeah.
wanted.
I think that's a really good method from Gen.G. It's like you get this. I mean, you get the message from Crusty. I think it makes it a lot more enticing. You know, like the big boss. He sends you the message, and you believe in the project a lot more than you would without him.
So I guess it was a bit of a no-brainer for you then once you got that
Yeah,
message. Did he
yeah.
talk to you much about the team? Were you like first through the door, or were there
I
pieces
think
already in place, or were you sort
yeah.
of pitched as a whole? This is the team.
No, I think he had Mag in very first. I think Mag was a very sought after player in the off season. I think
Mm.
a lot of partner teams were talking to him. I think Krusty got him locked in first. And I think he was kind of just filling out roles by like quantity, you know. So he got Mag because he didn't think there were very many alternatives, and then he locked me in early because I think he wanted a European min support, and he thinks because I'm like one of the younger ones, I guess he wanted one that he thinks he could teach a lot. And then after that, I think it was about filling out the European players. And he asked me about that, so I had a bit of input on the European players because obviously that's more on my expertise than Krusty's. And then Krusty was really big on Top Dragon as well. But yeah, I think he asked me for input on the European players, and then he handled the Korean side of it.
And then obviously, I don't know how many people know this already, but then during your preseason, everything's locked away. You get a nice Christmas break, and then you go and boot camp in Korea for a bit as well. So
Yeah.
how was the experience? Was it your first time in Korea?
It was my first time. It was fucking sick. I really loved it there. Like not even just like obviously the scrims practice is nice, but just the environment there. And I think when you're like a newly made team, especially a mixed team where a lot of your players have never really spoken to each other, I think learning how to play with each other in person is so much easier than doing it online. I think that was the main like benefit of the boot camp, because even if we weren't even scrimming, like we weren't triple blocking every day or anything, but just being around each other and getting to VOD review in person and not being able to just like log off after scrim, I think it makes solving problems much easier. And I think doing it in a nice place, like we're in the Gen.G facility and in the middle of
Oh yeah.
Seoul, I think it was a really fucking good thing for us. I think it did a lot for us.
And what are your sort of obviously first time working with Crusty? What are your early impressions working with someone who comes in with like such a big
Yeah,
reputation, such a big history of success?
I mean, he's about where you'd expect him to be. I think because I think a lot of the coach debate often goes to like dad coaches versus real coaches. You
Hmm.
know, like coaches who actually coach or coaches who set the environment. I think he's the first coach I've had who is like the perfect mix of both. Like I think he really knows his shit about the game, which you'd probably expect from Krusty. But he's also really good at like bringing people together and making an environment. So I think he's like the perfect person to pull our roster together because we're younger players and mixed roster. Some of us don't speak the same languages, but having him there, I think he's really the centerpiece of the team.
I think especially with a mixed team, It happened a lot in Overwatch League. If you ever had like a mixed team, there would always be an emphasis to maybe have a Korean coach in some form just to help bridge that gap a
Yeah,
little bit. But obviously, Crusty, pretty fluent in both languages, can really sort of bridge the gap there for the whole
yeah.
team.
I think it's him and TOPDRAGON because TOPDRAGON is also pretty fluent in English. I think having someone like that in game is like really really helpful when one of your other players doesn't have the same level of like English. I think it's really
How
nice.
how would you rate Mag's English then? Is it more just like in game okay and conversational maybe a bit harder, or
It's okay in game. I think he can make simple calls and understand simple calls, but we're finding it's workable for sure. Like it's not like what's unplayable. Like we're finding ways around it. He's trying very hard to learn, and we're finding ways to work around him. So I think it'll cause no issues later down the line.
and I have to ask, of course, one thing that happens at a Korea boot camp is you get to scrim all the big boy Korean teams. So, how was the experience playing against some of those sort of most established rosters from last year?
I don't really know. Like, I think the quality actually didn't feel that different. Maybe that's a weird thing to say, but I think it's mainly the comps. Like, you play against T1 or you play against these teams, and they're always locking Monkey, Ball, Doomfist. Like, those aren't heroes you see in Europe. You never see those guys. I think the quality of play wasn't too insanely high, but I think just the quality on like the comps is really different. Like in Europe, you're playing all these slog rush mirrors all year round, and then you go, but they have like the similar quality, but on the dive, I guess.
And then you're back now in the UK. Obviously, are you bringing the Korean guys over in some way to have them not be on ping for a lot of
Yeah,
the season?
they're in Riyadh for now. I think I'm not exactly sure where, but I think the goal is eventually to get us all in the same place.
Okay.
Find like a place in Europe and send us all there. I think if we can do that, that would be really good. I think
Is it the same with Crusty as well? Is he over with the players?
he's not there yet. I think he's gonna go soon, but he had some stuff to do first.
Okay, fair enough then. And then, obviously, you guys got everything locked away pretty early. So you then got the luxurious position of sitting back and watching the chaos as all the other rosters formed.
Yeah.
Now all the other rosters have formed. How do you feel you stack up to that sort of what is looking like quite a pretty filled out top 8 in EMEA?
Yeah, I think people are underrating us a lot. I think they look at our roster, and on paper, it's not got the same like we haven't got any like insane Overwatch League superstars, whatever. But I think we stack up pretty good. I think in Europe there's a pretty hard top 4 or top 5. I haven't scrimmed Alcatia yet, so I don't know. But I don't think our roster's perfect, obviously, but I don't think any roster in Europe is perfect. I feel like every roster has a hole somewhere, so I feel like it's going to come down a lot to who can fill that hole, I guess.
Because the obvious one to point at, your version of this and where the hole is probably in the DPS. In terms of TOPDRAGON and Sauna,
Yeah.
very good on the flex DPS roles and gives you an advantage there. But obviously, we've not really seen Sauna play hit scan except for maybe in the World Cup for Team Finland. So how worried are you? And that's like an exploitable weakness that is going to be targeted by other teams.
I'm not worried. I mean, I think Sojourn is a Kappa hit scan hero. I feel like any top level flex DPS player can play Sojourn with a little bit of practice. I mean, I think maybe Ashe and Widow. I think those are where the gap maybe comes in a bit if those are like hard meta. But I feel like those aren't real hard meta heroes anymore, especially with hero bans. I feel like you can, especially when we have a tank who can play as many dive heroes as Mag can. I feel like it's really really easy to get around the hit scan weakness. And then I think even if we do have to play hit scan, like Sauna played hit scan for years in contenders before he was in Overwatch League. He has experience in World Cup and in flash ops. Like I think he's pretty good. I don't think so. I don't understand why people are saying we have an enormous DPS weakness when there are teams who have a hard hit scan who can't play flex DPS. I feel like that is more of a weakness than not having a hard hit scan player, in my opinion.
Easier to target because we'll
Yeah,
talk about hero bans a bit because maybe one of the biggest things or changes about the hero bans in OWCS this year compared to Esports World Cup when we first experienced it is that the bans come in after the roster.
after. Yeah.
Obviously, that doesn't really affect you because you're a 5-person roster,
No.
so it's going to be the same group anyway. Do you feel having actually a smaller roster is actually an advantage in this sense then?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a really I don't know if I think the system's good or not. It benefits my team, so I guess it's pretty good. But I feel like having a small and inflexible roster, like you know what VP have, where they have
Mhm.
only Vess. He's pretty inflexible. But I feel like that's low key better than having 2 tanks. I think once they sub a tank in and out, they're basically saying exactly what style they want to play. So you can really easily ban it. But I think leaning into one tank, even if they're inflexible, might actually be better than having two.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in terms of there's a lot of like strategy in terms of how can you actually target or enable things.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of esports World Cup and maybe even a little bit initially in Korea as well, where it's not always the most straightforward ban that actually wins you it. It's if you ban this. Like maybe a good example is I think it was only if you saw it like Zeta Division had to play Gibraltar against the Winston team.
Yeah, I saw.
So they banned Brig, and then all of a sudden Burner can play Diva, and he's actually just able to run riot on like an Anakiri background.
Yeah, it goes so deep. I think it's really. I think Hero Band's only problem is that it's pretty hard to see the intention as a viewer. Like I feel like so many times as a viewer, you're gonna look at this ban and think, "What the fuck is this guy doing?" But a lot of the time, the ban will have 3 or 4 layers to it, and I think some of the smartest bans obviously often make no sense on the surface. Like there was one where like there was a team, I can't remember who it was. I think T1 banned Zaya on King's Row, and I was seeing so much flame for that. But it's like this team wants, or it was Zeta or something. It's like this team wants to play the Diva Mirror, but the other team has banned Farah, so the Diva Mirror is worse into Brawl, so they have to ban like it's just shit like that. I think it's pretty hard to see as a viewer.
You sort of also need some background knowledge of like.
Yeah,
there are some comps that were played in scrims that you might never actually see get played on stage or in the main event that are now being banned around because of this.
It feels. It makes the gameplay
full development from it.
Yeah, it makes the gameplay way more exciting in my opinion. Hero bans, I think it's really good, but I think it's not very viewer friendly for like if you're trying to actually understand the bans. Like if you just want to go in and watch Overwatch, I think it's sick. But if you actually want to understand it a bit more, I think it gets pretty fucking hard without any of that background knowledge.
Yeah, I guess you can lean the other way as well and just be like, take the bans on face value and just be like, just watch the Overwatch Hero content being played type thing as well. The other sort of change that's come in is the change to the map pool in terms of we've got a smaller map pool than we did last season, and they've also done some grouping. So now Hybrid and Flashpoint are now grouped together, which means we've only got four modes / groups of modes, meaning map 5 is now super powerful because map 5 you get to pick multiple modes. How do you feel about this change?
I don't know. I don't really mind. I feel like I saw Landon say that Hybrid and Flashpoint is a weird grouping, and I agree with that. But I think the map 5 change is good. I think having Escort as a map 5 was the worst thing ever. I think you either need Koth as a map 5 or you need anything. Like Koth was, but I think Koth still is map 5. I think that was the perfect system. But there's a few too many game modes to do that now, I guess. But I think this is better than what they had last season, I guess.
They've also changed some of the structure too, in terms of now rather than a circuit point system that was a little bit convoluted and confusing last year, it's now just direct qualification. So you just do well in the tournament, you qualify directly to the LAN event. Do you feel this is a better system than we had last year?
Yes, for sure. I mean, by stage 3 or stage 4, like people weren't even building rosters based on who they wanted to play with. It was like circle points first. Yeah, it's actually a maths problem. It stopped being I want to play with this player, I want to play with this player. It started being this player has this many points, this player has this many points. So I think the circle point system didn't even work for what it was trying to achieve. I think making it simple is so much easier.
One of the consequences of making it sort of simpler and cleaner is last year we would still have situations where you'd maybe start a tournament, there'd be a patch mid-tournament, and then you'd have to play the end of the tournament on a different patch. Obviously, last year there was a bit of mitigation because at least there was stage 1 and stage 2 circuit points, so you could maybe get screwed in stage 1, but stage 2 you don't get screwed. Now, obviously, if a patch happens right before the regional playoffs to get to China, it could really shift the power rankings of who's on top. How worried are you about how that could affect your team?
I think I'm not super worried. I mean, we have a 5-man roster, which is problematic because a team like the Ultimates could just swap their players around a bit. But I think our goal anyway is to learn a lot of heroes and a lot of ways to play the game and to be the most flexible team. And I think if your LAN qualification comes down to a patch or a comp diff, then I think that's a team problem anyway. I don't think you can really blame the patch too much.
And then in general, you feel your team has the flexibility to deal with all of this? Because I feel like flexibility is a word that's going to keep coming up this year with loser picks, hero bans, all of this. You feel your team has the flexibility to basically deal with anything?
I think that's the goal. I don't know how much of it is achieved right now. I think Mag is more flexible than people give him credit for, especially in Overwatch 2. Like, I feel like the main struggle of being a solo tank is learning the main tank heroes, and obviously he already has that down. Like, I think learning D.Va and Sigma or whatever is much more accomplishable than learning Bull or learning Monkey. We have the double flex DPS lineup, which Falcons had last year, which was very flexible. And I think my main goal for this year is to learn more heroes. So I think if we do what we want to do, I think we're going to be the most flexible team, hopefully.
And then I want to ask a little bit as well, because we're actually very close to the start of the season, finally. I say finally, it's been like a month. But
shortest offseason ever.
Shortest offseason ever. How do you feel then going into that opening week of games? How do you feel the current power level and performance of the team is?
I think we're doing pretty good. I feel like everyone in Europe is pretty even right now. I think it's hard to say which way the games will go, but I think if we play our game, I think we can definitely win against anyone right now. But I think the same goes for basically anybody. So I think it'll be a really fun opening weekend. And shout out to Blizzard for putting the best games first to bump the viewership.
It's a hell of an opening weekend, really. Yeah.
Did TU play on the opening weekend, or is it just the 3 partner teams?
I think they do. I can't remember the. I think they do play. No, they do play.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember the exact.
That's a banger opening weekend then. Holy shit!
Because I'm trying to remember now. Are you guys the curtain raiser? Are you the very first game of the day?
Us and VP as the very first game. Is that the first game of all Western OWCS? I think it is, right?
Yeah, it will be.
That'll be a sick game, I think. Raiser. I'm really excited to play.
Yeah, I think 2 of the partner teams, 2 of two teams that I think people probably have pretty close in terms of power rankings from the outside as well. So I think will be a big informative one in terms of early strength.
Yeah. I think it's a good rivalry as well, because obviously we have Sauna and Khenail from the last VP roster. Yeah. So I think those guys are going to be fucking dialed in.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really fun game.
Versus Shockwave and Gala, it's going to be
actually some beef in the lobby.
And then, of course, I wanted to give you a chance as well, because Gen.G, brand new wall coming into Overwatch. How have you found your experience working with Gen.G so far?
It's been basically perfect. I mean, they're a really big org, right? You'd expect it from them. But I've never really been on too many orgs. I was on TM for a bit, but other than that, I've never really been. And I think Gen.G is such an amazing first experience. We signed for the team, and 2 weeks later, I'm sat in their facility in Seoul. I feel like there's not much more to say.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. Yeah. Pretty nice treatments, but they've been perfect, basically. And I'm really, really excited to play for them for a year.
And as a brand new team, brand new roster as well, obviously, I think a lot of fans are coming into this new season, sort of trying to find a team to watch and support. What would you say to any sort of fans coming in looking for Gen.G?
I think we're going to be a really fun team to watch, because I think our players have a lot to prove, players that haven't had a chance, Mag, or people who have people who have been kicked off rosters, or people who have never been on a top tier team. I think we're going to be trying a lot of shit. We're going to be playing a lot of different stuff, and we're going to be really scrappy. So I think it's going to be a really fun team, an unpredictable team to watch. So if you want to watch and have a lot of emotions while we play, I think you should support us.
Well, I think especially even players like TOPDRAGON, right, have found themselves sort of floating about Saudi E-League teams, AOMA, never really on a top roster. Yourself as well, probably maybe outside of TM for a bit last year. Never been on one of these teams that is really just in the race for first, essentially, or top 2, and probably even maybe Khenail a bit more with VP. But I think maybe outside of Mag, there's actually a lot of players, even Sauna, I think as well, a bit with VP last year. But this probably feels for a lot of the players on this team, this is the best team you've been on so far, essentially. The team with the best shot at getting that land spot. All right, then, Crispy, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us, and best of luck this weekend.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to put on a show.